My name's Dave Hampton, and I worked with two co-curators, Steve Aldana and Todd Pittman, to bring this show behind me to the Mingei International Museum. The show is called Inside the Design Center. This is a very specific snapshot. The Design Center is two things as far as this show goes. It's a building, it's a commercial complex on Fifth Avenue that was designed by an architect named Ilse Ruocco, and he and his wife Ilse Ruocco were champions of a sort of modern design community in San Diego. And they were real advocates for people getting together. They brought a variety of different artists together to found organizations. And so they brought this kind of community activist spirit to the Design Center. And this was a purpose-built place for those creatives. But everyone that was involved with the Design Center was what we talk about, it's a kind of a vague term, but they were modernist. And so they weren't doing historical, recreating historical styles ad nauseum. They were interested in a certain kind of approach to living and a certain kind of aesthetic. And that's what made the place, the Design Center, the building, this incredibly rich hub for a whole modern community. The second part of the Design Center was a showroom that was run by Ilse Ruocco. She had been a teacher for decades at San Diego State in the art department. She taught ceramics, she taught design. She wound up founding the interior design program at San Diego State, and Ilse opened a furniture showroom and a place where she could offer her interior design services in the business called the Design Center. So on the wall behind me is a blown up version of this ad, this full page ad, which was from the December 1950 issue of what was called then Magazine San Diego. I mean, it evolved and all that into San Diego Magazine. But the ad shows Ilse Ruocco's showroom, and as I learned through the help of Steve Aldana, one of the co-curators, we began to gradually understand what more and more of the content of the ad revealed. And that, to my mind, was really illuminating. There's all kinds of important California design. A lot of it's sort of over to the right-hand side. You see all the pieces with the iron rod or steel rods and the wood tops. And so what we did is essentially recreate the spatial relationships, find all those pieces that we could distinguish in the picture and find a way to install them here. So I have curated a number of exhibitions before, and none of them were done in the way that we had to approach this. This was finding a template, finding this photograph, and having it curate the show, basically. It said, figure out what the pieces were, and then try to find them. It was really a challenge. And Steve and I set about identifying the pieces. With his network of connections, we were able to find probably about 80% of what we could distinguish in the photo. But the California design pieces were sometimes made in someone's garage or sometimes made by a very small company and in limited numbers. So this tray table is made by a company called Modern Color, and Modern Color was a Los Angeles-based small post-war manufacturer, and it was run by a designer, a woman named Dorothy Schindel. And just briefly, that's another thing about this show, is that in a lot of the historical precedent, it's the men that get all the ink, and it's the men that get the credit, right? And it's their names. And it's only much more recently that a lot of exhibitions about modern design have gone to some lengths to rebalance this imbalance, because there were plenty of incredibly talented, active women that really made this time period what it was. And so in this way, I also think our show helps to rebalance those scales. We're looking at a showroom that was a business operated by a female, and many of the pieces that she included in her opening of her showroom were designed by females, or in the case of Modern Color, came from a company that was run by a female. So it's nice that that is the truth of this story, and it's just there. It's just about time we remember this so we can understand the period in a more full way instead of this limited way. So the tray table was built by Modern Color, but it was designed by an LA-based man called Milo Boffman, who had a very extensive design career. This is a hard-to-find piece. It's a surprising, weird turn of events that happened with some of these things, but one of them showed up at auction in only a few months before we were to open here. And Steve tried to bid on it, and he got outbid, and we thought we'd lost it. And then it turned out it was a friend of Steve's and mine who had purchased the table. So he was happy to lend it for our show. Another thing, which is also from Modern Color, is this really nice outdoor chaise lounge. And this is designed by a woman named Greta Grossman. Greta Grossman was born in Sweden, but spent most of her life in LA and designed houses and designed furniture. She even retired and settled in San Diego, and when she passed away, it was up in Encinitas. This chaise, Steve had found an image of a Modern Color advertisement that showed this chaise. So in this case, we had to have the whole thing replicated. So we had an architect friend who helped provide some design drawings, and then we went to some skilled welders and manufacturers in LA that knew how to help with this kind of thing. So there has been a fair amount of excitement, but it's because of the challenges of trying to find all these things in a fairly short period of time. So I'm very, very excited that we have this film footage, color film footage of the Design Center building under construction, the site beforehand. Todd had this amazing film. It does so much for this exhibition. It just wouldn't be the same without it, because if you spend a little time, you can see the trucks that people drove, you can see the tools that people used, the clothes that they wore, and it really is sort of ancient almost by today's standards. It looks so different from today, and I think that is really helpful to get people into the mindset of when all this furniture was designed and when this story that we're talking about, when they built this remarkable building. One of the things, as I've researched this particular area of arts and architecture in the post-war era in San Diego, I'm continually surprised and impressed by how much terrific activity was going on here that, much like today or other periods of time, has not been super well embraced by the community, has not been super well documented, and yet is really, really important. For many years, sort of this time period of the post-war era, the late 40s and the early 50s, was still recent past for a lot of people. So there was a sense that it may not have been so important. People might have thrown out their chairs, their Eames chairs, or their furniture, or their records from that time period. What's important is to put San Diego into this broader context of everything that was happening when the photograph was taken at the end of 1950. There's this huge war effort that is, built up San Diego. There's industry, and there are threads throughout this exhibition, small threads perhaps, but threads of people and influences that connect to San Diego in this broader story of sort of post-war modern design. For me, this show, the photograph taken in 1950, means that the pieces in the exhibition, the pieces that Ilse stocked in her showroom, were all made roughly in the late 1940s. And that's a tiny window of time. That time period is most accurately defined in the United States as post-war modern design. And I'm saying all that because the war influenced the aesthetic and influenced the manufacturing possibilities and influenced the materials and influenced everything about this post-war time period. You had designers thinking about how can I make a very simple ergonomic design, but also they're limited in the kinds of materials. And also there's a kind of a look that we think of as post-war California design, and it's really defined by characteristics like simple timber, wood that was readily available in California, and simple versions of steel that might have been easy to get even right after the war. So sort of steel rod that you could just bend to make a base for a wood top. That's echoed over and over throughout this look. But those limitations also work together with the designer's aesthetics to create some of the most simple, clever kinds of designs you could hope for. I'm really proud that especially the Mingei, it sees the value in a sort of a different approach to an exhibition like this is. And I'm very proud of the work that my co-curators, Todd Pittman and Steve Aldana, did. The expertise that they brought to this is so rich. We've taken this snapshot of something that's historically significant in San Diego that most people don't know anything about. The Design Center is a historically designated landmark by the city of San Diego. The building is right there on Fifth Avenue, dwarfed by these huge sky rises that are starting to change that neighborhood so drastically. And time goes by and things change. The Design Center, you know, if you drive by, you miss it. You blink and you miss it. We blink and we miss this whole story in San Diego's design history, and it's important. And I feel proud that Mingei and my co-curators, Todd and Steve, have been able to bring this story of a really tightly focused story and hopefully remind people about San Diego's active, robust design community in the post-war era.